it won't be long before they find the genes responsible for all of mankind's various behaviors.
Good evening, kiddies. This is episode 5 of Dr. Frick's Home for the Mentally Unique, otherwise known as Dr. Frick's Home for the Mentally Unique. In the last episode, I went over how I'm creating the animation, all the different styles of animation, and what it's going to take to do it. I also went over taking the 25-year-old demos and what process I would use to bring them up to present time, make them sound good, you know, like I just created them, using a similar process to what the Beatles did with their latest release. But this time I'm going to talk about the script. 25 years ago, I wrote a script for the musical, stage musical, live musical, and it was called Meat Street. It had a lot of problems. It was 3 hours long. It had like 19 people in the cast, and it had a lot to do with the mental health industry, and half the audience was on Prozac, so it didn't last that long. But I figured I got to come up with a way, because I had something like 28 songs, and nobody's heard them, most of them. And I really wanted to bring it back to life. So how would I do that? I had to make a film out of it. And how am I going to make a film when I got no budget for actors? We're talking low budget here. No, we're talking no budget here. So anyway, I had to come up with an idea to make a screenplay out of that long musical. And my idea was, I can't hire actors, so what do? Well, I'll draw the actors. I'll make it animated. I'll be the only live character. I'll be playing a guy named Uncle Neal. This is a stretch for my acting abilities. And basically, I'll be sitting by a fireplace, and I have an animated character, a 5-year-old nephew named Orson. I'll be reading the story, because Orson was watching the TV upstairs in his room, and he was getting very nervous about what he was seeing on the TV, and so he couldn't sleep. So he comes down and says, "Uncle Neal, tell me a story, I can't sleep." So he wakes me up. I had this book on my chest as I was sleeping called Meat Street, and I figured I'll read that. Doesn't matter that he's 5 years old. So that's how I turned it into a film. I'll be the only live character. Everything else is animated. Which is why it's going to take probably a couple of years to finish. So let me give you a rundown of the main characters. First, we have 3 friends, which are the main characters, other than Dr. Frick himself. And we have Tony, Danielle, his girlfriend, and Flo. Tony is what we might call a conspiracy theorist, but in actuality, he's somebody who's looking for the truth. So he watches a lot of videos and reads a lot of articles and books. And he's very nervous about helping the world. What is he going to do? So he takes a job selling low-flow toilets. In case you don't know about them, low-flow toilets are these toilets that use less water. So it saves the planet by using less water. The only problem is it doesn't do a very good job, so you have to flush it 2 or 3 times for the same load. Anyways, for some reason that I'll get into, Tony ends up at Happy Hills, the mental institution. Well, it's mostly a mental institution. It's also a hospital, a general hospital, and Dr. Frick is the owner and the head doctor there. Dr. Frick's father was a Nazi psychiatrist who came over to this country. You've heard of Operation Paperclip and MK Ultra. The CIA took a whole bunch of Nazi scientists and psychiatrists, brought them over to this country, gave them jobs. So we have Tony. He's in the hospital. We don't know why yet, and he's being drugged. And Dr. Frick is trying to find out from Tony where a certain book is. You see, Tony turns out to be the son of a guy who called himself John Q. Public. John Q. was a patient of Dr. Frick's many years ago. And he was being tortured and electrocuted, shock therapy. But he escapes with the help of an orderly. And John Q writes a whole book about everything that went on there. So Dr. Frick has been trying to find this book. And he figures if he can get a hold of Tony, which he has now, and hypnotize him and drug him, Tony will tell him where the book is. Then we have Tony's girlfriend, Danielle, who's pregnant. And Tony just found out in a flashback. She's a painter, and she's kind of wimpy, I guess you'd say. She's not very causative. She's not a take-charge person. She paints pretty pictures, and she doesn't want to see any of the bad stuff in the world.
I'm a painter, not a prophet. I can paint away the things that I don't care to see. I'm a question, not the answer. So don't ask too much of me. I'm a painter, not a prophet. I'm an actor, not a playwright. Every day is filled with what to be or not to be.
Then we have Flo. Now Flo, when I wrote the original character 25 years ago, Flo was at that time we called them transvestites, which was basically a guy who liked to wear dresses. These days it's a whole different thing, so I have to hold my tongue. No, I don't hold my tongue, but I don't get into the political correctness about it. Flo is basically a trans person who was convinced at 3 years old, when she was a boy named Joe, he liked to play with dolls. So his mother, being a very modern woman, whisked him off to Happy Hills. And a few hours later, they were on their way home with a handful of prescriptions and about 5 mental disorders. So ever since then, Flo has been a woman, identifying as a woman. All right, so Flo is a very interesting character. I actually cast her 25 years ago as a female. I wanted a biological female playing the part of a male trans person. I wanted the female voice for my music to reach certain notes and everything. So I just threw that in there to make it even more confusing to the audience. But Flo is pre-op, meaning she's the next morning she's going to Happy Hills. She's been in therapy for over 20 years. And the next morning she's going in to have her cut off. So yeah, and I'm telling all this to a 5-year-old Orson. Anyway, so she's having second thoughts about the operation. She's also very self-centered, but she goes through an arc along with Danielle. They both go through this arc where by the end of the story they become the heroes and save Tony's life right before he gets shock therapy. And then we have Dr. Frick. His father was a Nazi psychiatrist, as I said, and Frick is kind of following in his father's footsteps. He wants to find that book, so he's got Tony in there, and he's drugging him, he's hypnotizing him. While he's doing that, Tony is having flashbacks, and through the flashbacks we see how the story unfolds, how all 3 friends end up at Happy Hills at the end of Act 1, and how they end up saving the day. Meanwhile, there's a lot of interesting side characters like the orderlies and the mental patients and group therapy. Let's see, is there anything I'm leaving out? We have Nurse Rather, who's the head nurse. We have a very sexy nurse. Can't wait to draw her. Her name is Jenna Talia. We have an orderly who's a hero. His name is James. We have another orderly who's a bad guy named Angel, and a whole bunch of moms in one of the stories. Anyway, I'm getting too much into it at this point. As you can see, it's a pretty big thing, 103 pages, and every part that isn't the live Uncle Neal narrating something, even though I'm narrating off camera, there'll be a lot of me narrating on camera, sitting next to a fireplace, which I don't have, which I created through the magic of computing. And For the next episode, I'm going to go into the music. My plan on this thing, since it's going to take so long, I'm going to do the first 12 minutes, which is the intro, which introduces all the characters and the plot, and the song called Meat Street. Right now I'm animating that. I'm about halfway done. The music, as I said before, is all done. But what I'm going to do is, in a few months from now, or a couple of months, when that's finished being animated, I'll put it up on YouTube and Rumble. And if anybody wants to see the story, since it's going to take 2 years to do, or more or less, I'm going to put out an audiobook. So I'll be narrating the entire story, plus it'll have the entire soundtrack. It's 18 full songs and 29 altogether with some incidental songs. So they'll be able to hear the whole soundtrack, see the story, hear the story. It's an audiobook, not a reading book, while they're waiting for me to finish this. And hopefully I can maybe do a fundraiser, get some people interested. And at the same time, I'm going to release the third thing, which is a soundtrack album. So it'll be streaming and available for purchase, which I hope somebody buys some of this stuff, because I'm not getting paid for this. This is zero budget. When I say zero, I mean zero budget.
The patient doesn't feel it.
So anyway, that's it for this particular episode number 5 of Dr. Frick's Home for the Mentally Unique. Hope you liked it. I love you guys. Stick with me. Watch from episode 1 if you don't know what I'm talking about. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Touch someone.